Okay, it's the main event. Okay, so welcome everybody. Good evening to you all. There's no fire alarm planned for this evening. Should the alarm sound, please leave via the nearest available emergency exit. Two of the closest exits are through the glass doors behind you and to my left, that's over there, and through the double doors onto the riverside, straight through the middle there under the clock there. So please meet at Tower House car park if you are evacuated. Members of the public are welcome to make their own recordings of this meeting using whatever non-disruptive methods they think are suitable. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting is being filmed and made available to view in live and archive form via the Council's website. If you're seated in the public gallery, it's possible that the cameras may capture your image. If you wish to avoid being filmed, it's recommended that you make a member of the staff aware who will direct you to a seat that's not recorded. The Westgate Garden gates on the riverside are locked at sunset, so they're well and truly secured now. So members of the public must leave the Guildhall by the side exit behind the glass doors. Before we start working through the agenda, we will receive representations from members of the public. These can only be on any subject as long as the speaker has registered with us in advance and lives and works in the district. Each speaker will have a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. The whole public representations section will last for about 20 minutes at most. We have one speaker registered to make a representation tonight. There will be no discussion following the speaker's contribution, but Cabinet members may later refer to the issues raised if it's pertinent and part of the agenda tonight. So I'd like now to ask Andrew Tomes to come and address the Cabinet. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chair. So good evening, everyone. My name is Andrew Tomes, and just like all of you, I'm proud to live in Canterbury and proud to enjoy the rich heritage that we've got. But it also, for me, means I'm a custodian of that heritage as well, which is why I wanted to come here and just talk about the Biggleston lamppost for a few minutes. But firstly, I want to welcome Councillor Cornell's statement from last week and the commitment to establish a clear vision with defined design policies. I think that's going to be very important in preserving our legacy going forward, and I think it will also mean that the decision-making process to preserve that will be streamlined and more efficient going forward. But I'd like to encourage us to go further with that. I would also stress that in doing that, that includes better collaboration with other agencies like KCC, and also community groups as well. There's a lot of wealth of knowledge and expertise within these groups that collectively helps us safeguard, and I think collectively those teams, that's an important thing to do. Also, we need to establish plans on preserving and maintaining the historic lampposts that we've got today. I think preserving them is going to be a much more cost-effective mechanism than replacing them. But where we cannot preserve them, where we have to replace them, having a faithful replica of the Biggleston style lampposts is critical as well. Now, I do appreciate this isn't all within CCC's line of sight. The levers are not all there to pull, but rarely do we see problems that can be solved with one single group. It's about coming together and working collaboratively rather than sort of working around each other. It's working with each other. So I think that's an important point, and I think we're sort of stronger together in that particular approach. The time's running out. I know that in a few years' time, CCC and KCC will cease to exist, but this isn't a caretaker administration. There's still work to do. And these are our formative years as well in terms of, as we talk about building and memorialising our legacy. And this is our legacy collectively to make sure that we maintain and protect Canterbury's future. And whilst there's a lot going on with local reorganisation, and it will bring new structures, new organisation, it's going to bring a lot of new talent as well. But the transition in doing that is going to be challenging. I think sometimes we're going to get some challenges before we get the benefits. And heritage might not be the priority of that new unitary authority. So it's important to safeguard those protections now for our future. But I want to sort of talk a little bit about the absence of the agreed Biggleston-style lampposts as well. This isn't always just about accident. Yeah, as we've looked at some of the FOI requests, it's clear that there's been a lot of dialogue and discussion that's been going on for a number of years. And we can see that KCC has sought to try and resolve and bring solutions, but that agreement hasn't always been in place to agree on a faithful Biggleston-style design. And there was a warning from KCC in 2024 where they said if we can't timely agree a solution, then we're going to have to agree to an inferior solution. And that's effectively what happened. And, you know, they have agreed on a product that doesn't really align to the style that we're looking to achieve. So that's really what we need to do, is that engagement. I think that engagement up front may have actually saved more cost in the long run as well. So another final point I want to talk about just before we sort of move on to the next agenda item is that for me it's really difficult to sort of understand how complicated and how challenging this has become, you know, how solutions haven't been forthcoming. You've seen community groups organise petitions, they've engaged with the media, and they've even submitted information requests just to get the right understanding of actually what's going on with some of these problems. It has become more difficult, I think, interfacing with the council over recent years. It feels like the culture has shifted. It's sometimes not easy to see the collaboration, and sometimes, not always, but it can be rather defensive to work through. Not always you see the transparency. So these are things.
Just draw to a close, Mr. Tomes.
Okay.
If you wouldn't mind, please. Thank you.
So yeah, so that's all I wanted to say really. And it's just to prioritise on the funding. It's not always about what's in the council budget, but outside that as well. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time tonight to appreciate that. I think there's points that we understand fully there, and we appreciate your comments. Thank you so much. It's really good. We move now to the agenda part of the meeting. Cabinet's, just to point out, the Cabinet is part of the Council responsible for the most day-to-day decisions. It's chaired by the leader, who is elected by the Council, and that's me, Alan Baldock. The other Cabinet members are as follows: Councillor Sol, Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Finance. Councillor Castle, Cabinet Member for Property and IT. Councillor Hazelton, Cabinet Member for Housing. Councillor Dawkins, Cabinet Member for the Environment and Climate Change. Councillor Charlotte Cornell, Cabinet Member for Council Services, Culture and Heritage. Councillor Chris Cornell, Cabinet Member for Economic Development and Inclusion and the Coastal Towns Champion. Councillor Ricketts, Cabinet Member for Tourism, Transport and Performance and Oversight, and is also our Rural Champion. And Councillor Nolan is Community Engagement, Safety and Enforcement. The Cabinet collectively provides strategic leadership for the Council. First thing on our agenda tonight is apologies for absence. Vanessa.
Thanks, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Nolan.
Okay, so Councillor Nolan has apologies tonight. Also, it'd be good to have declarations of interest at item 2 for any members of the Cabinet. Any known? Obviously, you can declare anything later on if anything comes up in conversation. But okay, nothing to declare at this point in time. Thank you for that. Okay, it's time now for any announcements by Cabinet members. If they want to make announcements on anything, that'd be very appreciated. So I'm just going to go and make sure I've got everybody. I've got Alex, Mel, and Chris. Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Alex, thanks.
I just wanted to, as you may have noticed, it featured in the press a little bit that we had some water supply issues last week. I don't know if anyone was aware of it. Well, it seemed that South East Water weren't really aware of it, actually. I think we were. During a period where South East Water were telling us in the Blean area that we had low water pressure, I had residents contacting me who'd been without water for over 24 hours. Eventually, when they did realise that there were people without water at all in the Canterbury area, in no small part thanks to the work of Leo and the Canterbury City Council comms team, they reported that something like 1,500 people were without water. it was significantly higher than that, and anybody who knows the area, just by counting the number of houses along the main road, would have known that there were many thousands of people without water. And rather than focus on South East Water's execrable performance, I think I wanted to propose some thanks tonight. First of all, to some of the officers sitting here, Leo I've mentioned, and Peter as well. I was very proud of how quickly the City Council officers sprung in, that their emergency planning, that when we realised that our own residents were affected, that certainly our own vulnerable tenants in my area were looked after very, very quickly. And actually, perhaps slightly pertinent to a later discussion, both Blean Parish Council and in particular Hackington Parish Council were absolutely amazing. Hackington Parish Council very recently set up a resilience plan which swung into full effect, and they were distributing water to vulnerable residents from the Memorial Hall definitely before South East Water realised anything was going on. So where there were many, many failures, and there will be a great deal of dissection of what's going on, and I suspect this will not be the last time we suffer this, that some people did come out of last week absolutely covered in glory. So I wanted to thank those people tonight. Thank you.
That's amazing. Thanks for that, Alex, and wisely said. Thank you. Okay, Mel?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's more of an update, really. Sort of a couple of months ago, or maybe more than that, I asked for a report to be put together by the environment team to look into all the open space that we have in the district and to determine what sites we can have that would be suitable for voluntary designation for village green status, or also field in trust designation as well. So just sort of updating that report's been progressing well, and the environment team have been putting together something really great, and it should be coming out very soon to go through the normal governance process. But I wanted to sort of announce that because I know there's been a lot of issues about our open space and protecting it and all that sort of stuff. So I'm kind of excited for this report coming out and for you all to see it and to go through its normal governance routes. Okay. Also, another sort of small, I don't know if it's an announcement or an update or whatever, but we have got this biodiversity strategy that we've been working on for quite some time within the working group. It's all been finished, all the little tweaks have been done. So it has been slightly delayed, but I'm sort of hoping that it will be signed off very, very soon, and it will go out for consultation to the public. So just watch out for that as well. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Mel. I think that's a really good example of where this stuff goes on in the background, doesn't it? It's not all blaring lights, and all their frustrations that Mr. Tomes said tonight are all sitting there that control this flow of work that we have to do to make sure that the work this council does actually benefits everybody in the council, and is balanced in judgment. And that's why it takes time to get all the facts together. A couple of great reports, looking forward to that. And I know the cabinet will be bated breath for an early copy. So thanks for that, Mel. Chris.
Yeah, just two quick things. First is that last week we announced a series of free winter parking in the coastal towns in order to encourage some of our local shopkeepers over the difficult winter period. This is free parking in William Street and Neptune Car Park on Wednesdays in Herne Bay, and in Gorrel Tank and Middle Wall on Thursdays in Canterbury in Whitstable, and will continue to the 25th of March. The idea about this is that people can access the scheme if they sign up to the residence rate. So we're both encouraging them to receive a good discount over the winter, but also sign up to an ongoing discount, which they can continue to access elsewhere, and designed to see if we can encourage other members of the district to shop in some of our coastal towns and understand just how great they are. For those people who have problems signing up to the residence rate, there's information on the council website how to do that. And both of the libraries in Herne Bay and Whitstable have both staff who are trained and some IT buddies from KCC who can take people through the indicative example. So For a long time, the argument has been made that if we reduce parking, more people will come. This is a great opportunity for shopkeepers and the local residents to prove that that is the case and make use of it until the end of March. The second thing is just to quickly update Cabinet members on some of the work that we've been doing on health and the Health Alliance in the background. So myself and Pip were at a meeting at Spring Lane Community Centre this morning with a variety of health partners in the local area. And we were reflecting on some of the work over the last year. So we both operate at a kind of strategic level with health partners, but we've also been operating at a kind of local neighbourhood level. And we've had the first, this morning we had a presentation on the work in Herne Bay over the last year, and it was really positive. Since we started kind of bringing the key partners together in Heron, I think we've had, it's about £400,000 worth of grants, which local partners in that room have been able to leverage to start doing new work in the local area, including we're very excited to have Social Enterprise Kent deploy a specific member of staff to start working with the community, particularly in Heron, to identify what some of the substantive issues are. And the interviews, I think, for those are going to be completing on Thursday. We also effectively have been looking at where we go next. So the work in Heron will continue, but we'll be doing some work in March, working with partners and the local community in Barton and Northgate to look if we can identify particular communities in and around Canterbury City that we can start doing more proactive partnership work with again. Thank you.
Good news, Chris, all round. Thanks for that. It'll be good to report back on the parking issue as well, see how much it's improved the actual number of cars and people visiting the centre. Alex, do you want to come back on something on that?
Hot off the press, don't have the exact numbers, but we have had hundreds of sign-ups to the residence rate since that promotion's been running, so it's definitely having an effect. So
That's amazing. That's really good. That's exactly what we wanted. We were quite concerned what we could do to boost that rate up, and this is one thing to do that. Why would you not want a discount on your parking? You know, it's really good. Just a couple of tiny things for me, actually, all pale into insignificance when it comes to those important bits about the community. Just to say that on Wednesday, the Mid-Kent Water are actually facing the Kent leaders in a meeting as well, to answer questions and to help out. That would be Kent leaders, of course, from all of Kent, including this area, and the ones that are more seriously affected, perhaps you could say, in Tunbridge Wells area as well. So that'll be useful. And a couple of other just headline bits, really. I think just to change the direction for this is more in the bigger picture view. The first time in a generation, or maybe first time in nobody knew when it last happened, but all Labour council leaders were invited by the Prime Minister to a reception at number 10 to meet the front bench and the Prime Minister and, you know, chat and meet other leaders from the country. Although, obviously, we are lucky that our government actually engages very positively with all local governments now, not something that was shared by the previous government, unfortunately. And we often have Zoom calls with cabinet members, and especially those for local government. I mean, it's quite a common kind of occurrence, really, probably once or twice a month. This was quite an amazing thing to do. So first time for a generation. So when you think local government is forgotten by the government, it's definitely not. And I can vouch for that. It's probably hot. It's really, really on its agenda. And the other thing that I thought was just incredible, it's 30 years of the Eurostar, you know, and we are, again, this government has actually got behind stopping the Eurostar at Ashford by opening up a depot for Virgin Trains, who won the franchise in this side of the channel. There's another franchise been for an Italian company in France, and there's nothing that this government will put in the way to block it, and we've been assured of that at an event at Ashford Station just a couple of weeks ago. So maybe 29, 30, sounds like a lifetime away, doesn't it? Maybe Eurostar will be restopping at Ashford, which will be truly amazing for our tourist industry, and us as just people who live in this part of the world. So some good stuff there. So we're moved past the announcements to public participation. Part 4. 6 speakers, is that right, Vanessa? Yeah. And that'll be before agenda item 7. So we'll have all speakers then, yeah? Sounds good to me. Okay. Business then. So we need to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of December. Can I ask a seconder, please, for those minutes?
Seconded.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. Are there any comments on it? If not, we need to agree those by general assent. Happy with that, all of you? Thank you for that. So let's move forward there. Okay. Item 6 now is references to committee. So this is where we can note formally and our appreciation to the Overview Committee on the 11th of September and the 10th of December, who their work, their comments, the people that spoke and all that sort of stuff feed into our decisions tonight. And I actually think they're some of the most useful comments that we get to help us make decisions tonight, and hopefully make the right decisions based on the widest possible set of evidence that we can and the widest number of opinions as well and thoughts. So if there's anything anyone else want to raise anything on those? If not, I think we've all got them. We get those copies that we can work through this agenda as well. So again, just general assent on those. If you note them, please, that'd be really good. Thank you for that. Okay, now this is the first part of the agenda. This is items to be considered with public participation. The part B later is things that have already been through committees where public participation has been part of that decision. So, okay, pages 26 to 38 in our agendas, if anyone's following that on that as well. So we work through the 6 public speakers in the order here.
Yeah, that's
okay? Yeah, okay. Thank you for that. So really appreciate that. So Councillor Rachel Carnac, please. Thank you very much. This, of course, is for the evaluation of community governance review and the other alternative options, if I didn't make that absolutely clear. Thanks.
Thank you, Leader. Good evening. Thank you for listening to us on the subject of community governance review and looking again this evening at implementing one for the unparished parts of Canterbury District. As you know, this is something I've long supported. I welcome this paper, but I think the recommendation as it stands now that a CGR is only held for the unparished area of Canterbury to consider the creation of a town and or parish councils alongside other options without including Herne Bay and Whitstable at this stage is a very costly solution, both in terms of finance and in being divisive. From a Herne Bay perspective, this looks yet again that Canterbury comes first and we're left behind on the coast. I have asked, albeit a small straw poll of Herne Bay residents since this paper was published, from different backgrounds, political persuasions and age groups, and I get the same response. Herne Bay deserves a voice. And that voice should be equal to Canterbury's. I think it's wrong to leave a CGR on the coast to the implementation plan for the unitary authority in 27 or even 28. I imagine the unitary may not think this is a priority when the rest of the area is fully parished, apart from very possibly Herne Bay and Whitstable. It leaves 2 coastal towns vulnerable in all the ways that we discussed at the recent full council meeting. It makes me personally very worried for Herne Bay. I might sound like a stuck record, but I'll say it again. It is our duty as the elected members of this council to carry out the CGR across all the unparished areas. We should not be leaving that to as yet unelected and unknown members who might have completely different priorities to the 39 councillors on this council who were elected in 23 and subsequently. And also let the people speak. It's their choice. Local government reorganisation will change the landscape for local representation, as we know. And increasingly, what I hear is that the people of Herne Bay, and apologies for this because it sounds a little like someone to the west of us, want to be run by Herne Bay for Herne Bay. Therefore, I ask that you look at the recommendation to this council and ensure it protects the people of Herne Bay and has their best interests, which is all really I'm interested in, at its heart, and is equally and fairly connected with the other unparished parts of the district in carrying out a CGR. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rachel. Bernadette Fisher is next, please.
Okay, first time I've been anywhere near a cabinet. So, well, other than in my house. The agreement establishing this administration in May 23 stated the desire to govern for the whole district will be supported by a full governance review within 2 years. The last full CGR was 7 years ago, and some of us were involved, and was of the whole district. It was in accordance with old New Labour legislation, which still applies, and assumes that any review of local democracy in a district not based on a petition would treat all parts of the district fairly. We understand that any delay in carrying out a CGR for Whitstable and Herne Bay would be detrimental to us and may terminally delay establishment of any local democratic structure for our towns. It's hard to avoid the sense that the coastal towns are being left behind in option 1. It's also clear that the proposed delay means that this council could not guarantee that our CGRs would ever take place. None of this accords with your intent in forming the administration or indeed your manifestos. Our research shows that all other districts in a future East Kent unitary are carrying out or have carried out CGRs already, where they have unparished towns. CCC is already behind the curve, and any further delay for some of us makes this worse, potentially creating an entrenched disadvantage. The government appears wedded to neighbourhood committees. Why aren't we? But we all know that they are precarious and have only delegated powers. You risk adding to that your coastal towns would only be represented, in quotes, at a local level by co-opted experts with no democratic legitimacy. I know that you know that that's not good enough, so please don't inflict it on us. At least give us the opportunity to say what we want in due time. Don't let your legacy, frequently mentioned at last week's full council, be to entrench the view that Rachel's alluded to, that this council always puts Canterbury first. We support any decision here that ensures that the 3 towns have a CGR at the same time and without delay, and hope that you will too. It'll be speedier, less costly, more coherent, and capable of implementing your desire to let the people of the district speak. Any delay for the coastal towns risks failure and is unquestionably, in our view, unfair. The task we all share is to promote local democracy. It's a tough one in the face of those who would deny the benefit of elected representation, and that it should be fairly funded by those it serves. So let it be this council's legacy that every one of us played our part in this struggle, which is equally global and ultra-local. It's the fight for our lives. Thank you.
Councillor Turnbull, please.
Thank you, Chair. There'll be a few similar themes, I think, coming out. So all 4 parties on this council made manifesto commitments to pushing decision-making capacity to the lowest possible local level. To deny a review for 2 out of 3 towns in this district has no basis, therefore, in principle nor in reason. So has Cabinet considered how it would justify any decision to permit a community governance review in Canterbury but not the other towns? We often hear from residents that they think this council is Canterbury focused, always puts Canterbury first, doesn't care about Whitstable and Herne Bay. Can you imagine how it would be received if a decision is made to ensure Canterbury has proper elected representation in a new neighbourhood area committee? And many villages and other small areas also have that status. But Canterbury City Council decided that it isn't as important for Whitstable and Herne Bay to have that level of representation. Isn't there a risk too of appearing partisan? Canterbury remains mostly represented by Labour, whereas currently Whitstable and Herne Bay are mostly represented by councillors of other political colours. Might residents perceive that the Labour representatives are keen to protect their own patch but care less about towns where their votes are fewer, perhaps? Issues of cost and officer time have been raised. These are poor arguments against carrying out this work. Other councils have made funding and time available. This is one of the final acts that the council can carry out for the benefit of its residents. Considerably more money has been found for political initiatives such as supporting an underperforming park and ride. The paper brought to Cabinet today refers to economies of scale, giving estimates suggesting that CGR for the two towns would only add £60,000, that is 30,000 each, to the 100,000 being allocated for Canterbury if carried out simultaneously, whereas later reviews prompted by petitions would be more costly. The main issues here are, one, a democratic deficit for unparished areas is inherent in the coming local government reorganisation, where our local district council is dismantled, along with the local representation, knowledge and understanding of our towns and villages that goes with it. And two, issues of fairness and equality as we move into a unitary authority, where all other towns and cities and many villages will have their own elected council with its own rights, representation, voice, decision-making powers, duties and responsibilities. This is about legacy for Canterbury City Council. Prove that you're a council for the whole district, not just for the city, and make the decision which treats all our residents equally. Thank you.
Councillor Joe House is next, please. I'll say councillor because I give him the respect that was due there. So thank you for that. Retired councillor. Let's go. Thank you, Joe.
Evening, everybody, and thanks for allowing me to speak tonight. I never actually expected to be back here again after 13 years, but what I will say is most of the things I am going to say have already been said, but I will start with the one thing. Since I've stopped being district-based, I am Herne Bay-based, and all I want to say is make Herne Bay great again. And I have got hats available in the car if anybody would like them. But I think that's just it. I think what we need to remember is we've got major changes to local government taking place, and with the formation of a unitary authority, people in Herne Bay are worried that their voices are going to be lost. With all the changes which are taking place, even if there is town councils or neighbourhoods in the distant future, it is the distance, and we're not going to have anything for a few years. And that will take away any form of democracy. Having served as a ward council where there was a parish, we're always the first port of call. And those sitting around here who are parish councillors know that. We've heard Alex talk about that this evening, how two parishes have done an amazing job. When South East Water let people down, we need people on the doorstep, somebody people know, somebody people trust and respect to help them out and to answer their difficult questions. And I feel that if there isn't Herne Bay and Whitstable included in this, this will be lost. And I think we've got to fully appreciate that. I was going to quote Alan's from 2023 or whatever he was elected, but that's already been said in the Labour website. Yeah. I was also going to say perhaps if it's not done, it's another Labour U-turn, but we know that doesn't happen, don't we? And what we've also got to consider is what Jim McMahon has said. Everything we want from the coast is what Jim McMahon's proposing. And I think we just need to, you just need to grasp it. I think the fact that you can get consultants in to carry out this work will take the burden off our officers. I understand our officers are completely stretched with these massive changes to local government and fully appreciate that. But I also think the needs of the people in Herne Bay and Whitstable and other unparished areas need to be taken into account. Thank you.
We next have Guy Mayhew. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and I'd like to thank Cabinet for commissioning this report that's before us tonight. I'm speaking tonight as both a resident of the district and as someone who cares deeply about how local democracy works here. I want to focus on what happens if this council does not commit now to a community governance review for all the unparished areas of Canterbury, Whitstable and Herne Bay on a single coherent timetable. Without a clear commitment to CGR, residents are denied a say in a very basic question. How local do they want some of their public services and decision-making to be? If Canterbury alone proceeds, while Whitstable and Herne Bay are deferred or left to some future process, the coastal towns risk becoming a small island in a much larger unitary authority with no statutory local voice, holding no assets, no budget and no permanence. That doesn't just affect Whitstable and Herne Bay. It affects Canterbury too. This is a historic city that works best with its complementary coastal towns, not in competition with them. Fragmented governance risks pitting places against each other for attention and resources, rather than allowing them to work as a connected system with strong local anchors. There is also a practical and financial risk here. A sequential CGR approach is likely to stagger decisions over several years with duplicate consultation, mapping, legal work and communications, ultimately coming with a significantly higher total cost. Instead of one coordinated review, we could end up with 3 separate exercises, not 160k, but something closer to 300k, spread over time under worse conditions. There is also a strategic risk. A future unitary authority may quite reasonably ask, if the district council did not think this was important enough to do when it had the powers and proximity to residents, why should we prioritise it now using unitary budgets? At that point, parish governance for Whitstable and Herne Bay becomes optional, not essential, and history shows that optional things are the first to be dropped. Finally, this matters to me personally. I've lived in this district all my life. I grew up in Sweltcliffe between Herne Bay and Whitstable, and I spent all of my adult life in the city. I know these places are different, but they are interdependent, and all of them deserve a genuine democratic choice about their future local governance. Members are not being asked tonight to vote for town councils. You are being asked to vote for the right of residents to decide in a way that is fair, timely, and joined up. If we miss this window, the choice may not come back. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sure it's last but not least, it's Tony Ullman, please.
Is that on? Is that on? Okay. I think we welcome the council has shifted, and it's clear now that the question is not will there be a community governance review, but when and what scope will it have? And that's the issue that concerns us, because we feel it's essential that any CGR is undertaken before vesting, before the new authority, and that it be district-wide. And the points have been made very clearly that if you agree to the report, the recommendation as set out, it will be divisive, it will potentially be too late for the coastal towns, and it also has the potential to rebound in terms of cost and officer resource. So all we're suggesting is that the report be amended in the to propose that an option for a district-wide CGR for the currently unparished areas be approved, and that's what we're asking Cabinet to agree today. I'm not going to say any more. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Okay, so I will ask Chris to pull that together and make a recommendation ultimately so that we can start the debate on this particular item. I would say just before Chris starts, I think we are open for a debate tonight in Cabinet. Many of you will recognise the Conservative days when there wasn't debate at Cabinet, but you will know that tonight's agenda, there will be debate tonight, and there will be different views put, I am sure. And you will, I hope, all of us will be able to make a decision based on what we've heard and what we feel, the facts that are before us, and everything else that goes with tonight's debate. So with that in mind, Chris, I'll leave it to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. So Cabinet has before it today a report from a Joint Chief Executive, Peter, and Matthew, explaining the complexities of carrying out a community governance review. And whilst this is an option paper, I think it's important to effectively say it tries to explore kind of 3 key things. So technically, in terms of the way that there is an options, there is a debate to be had about whether we have a CGR. That is one of the options. And to clarify that we are not the only body that can require or bring forward a CGR. Both members of the public can and historically have done so recently in Whitstable. But secondly, it clarifies some discussions about when we may choose to have one, whether we would like to go all in with doing the district all at once, or whether we'd like a phased approach, and leaves, it's important to say, some kind of clarification about what that phasing would be, to suggest that it could be 3 phases, it could be 2 phases, and there might be a scenario in which also it could be done as one of the final acts of the council, so that whilst the process starts, effectively it would have to be taken on by the incoming authority. Because community governance reviews, as the paper clarifies, are basically exercises which government recommend should take 12 months from start to finish. It then provides a bit of information on the how. So and that's fundamentally a large part of our discussion here, which is how much would it cost and where would we find that money from? What kind of oversight would it have and how would we form a committee to do so? And then what kind of delegated powers might we need to provide to officers in order to be able to instruct the decision were we to make it? Just before we kind of clarify and we enter the conversation, I just wanted to kind of slightly update Cabinet on some of the work we've been doing around cost, because I think that will be one of the substantive parts. The paper that's been circulated indicatively suggests that the cost of any type of work would be about 100k. It gives the example of Barnstead and Reigate, which costs 160,000. I think it's right that before we make this decision, we have been also looking at what the cost in total might be. So whilst that's effectively a cost which would be incurred by bringing in an external consultant, our indicative suggestion for the purposes of our conversation today is that any kind of CGR, whether effectively it's done in phases or whether effectively it's all done in one go, will indicatively cost around £290,000. And we expect that to be broken down as, for transparency's sake, in the following way. That will be £100,000 for consultants and up to 100 days worth of work, depending on the scope that we decide. £52,000 for communication and consultation with policy and engagement with local interest groups. Backfilling £35,000 for us to have a project manager indicatively to look at it. Up to £60,000 for printage and postage of leaflets to households. £15,000 for publicity. £10,000 indicatively for GIS mapping. We may need to draw new maps about what potential parishes might look like. And then a contingency cost. Now, that is not a breakdown set in stone. The purpose today is for us to be able to indicatively commit up to that amount of money in down from the budget. And if the exercise were more complicated, it might cost a little bit more, or vice versa. The proposal, as all council proposals, has a recommendation from officers. And so my recommendation is that I'm going to lay the officer recommendation for us to start the debate. Much like we would do at a planning committee, we need to start in one situation before we can decide if we disagree or agree with it. But I welcome a debate amongst all those members and some clarification if we can seek it. So based on the slight amendment in terms of cost, but with the detail that's been provided in the paper, I would like to recommend that this council commits up to £290,000 in the 2026-2027 budget to be drawn down from the budget stabilisation reserve as required for a community governance review, conducted as a phased project, option 1, starting with the unparished area of Canterbury to consider the creation of a town and/or parish councils along with others. Could I have a seconder to start the debate, please? Fine. Everybody, let's listen to what you say, what you think.
Okay, Mike, start us off, please.
Thank you, Alan. You probably noticed I didn't second that one because it's not actually one that I'm very keen on. I think parish councils and town councils are the lifeblood of our communities, or at least they should be. We're quite unique in this district that such a huge number of our residents are not represented by town and parish councils, and that's certainly not a position that I believe can continue under a unitary council. I think we've got a good record here in Canterbury under all administrations of looking after all areas of the district, but I don't believe that we can trust a unitary council to have that level of interest, if you like, in the unparished areas, particularly if it ends up that Canterbury, Whitstable and Herne Bay are the only unparished areas in an East Kent unitary. So I am fully behind us carrying out a community governance review, and I believe that we should crack on and do it for all the areas and not just start with Canterbury. One thing I do think is really important now is that we work cross-party at the very beginning to establish what the questions are going to be, and also to do a bit of wargaming, if you like, on what we're going to do with those answers when we get them before we get them. What level of support will be good enough for a town council? Everyone needs to know that before we start. You know, how many people need to vote for it? What are the questions going to be? We don't want to be in a position in 12 months' time where we're presented with a lot of data and all trying to analyse it and come up with different answers depending on what we might want to see out of it. So we need to be clear as we can at the beginning, and everybody involved in that. And also for those who spoke tonight, who will no doubt be out there campaigning for their towns and parishes, they need to know what the criteria are, and so we can do on that. We need to be really flexible in the questions we ask. We may not be talking about 3 town councils. We may be talking about extending some of the existing parishes into the urban areas, the creation of some new parish councils in addition to what we've already got. So the questions we ask need to be flexible enough to deal with that. So it's going to cost money. We know it's going to cost money, but local government reorganisation has been thrust on us by government. We've got to deal with it. And I don't see this as a political issue. We've got a job of business to do here to leave this district in the best possible way that it can be once we move into a unitary council. So I'm very supportive of us carrying out a community governance review, setting out clearly the questions we're going to ask, bringing everybody on board with that. And it may well be we ask the questions and the support isn't out there, but we'll have done our job by asking those questions. I'm not one for imposing this if the support isn't there. So for those in the public gallery who want this, go out there, talk to people, and and come back and raise that support. Yeah, nothing else to add. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Mike. I think tonight we'll have a bit of to-ing and fro-ing as well and debate if we okay with that. I've got Alex first, then Mel, and then Charlotte. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. I think it will come as no surprise to anyone that I agree with Mike. Actually, maybe it will. But and also, as already expressed this evening, my feelings about parish councils and town councils. But that was not always the case. I think if you'd have asked me 10 or 15 years ago if I wanted to pay extra tax for a town or parish council, I probably would have said no, because I wasn't aware of the work that they do and I wasn't aware of how important they are. And I think that there are a lot of people in this room who are very convinced of the need for town and parish councils, for unparished areas to have that local level of representation. I am one of them. And I think for me, the question of whether there should be that level of representation is absolutely a yes. However, the fact that we've been through this process and we've gone through a long process has helped me to realise that not everybody shares that view. And there is a job to be done for those who think that this is important, who've spoken very eloquently this evening, to convince their friends and neighbours of that as well. Because as we saw with the Whitstable example, that they actually got enough people together to raise a petition, but didn't carry the vote to get the town council through for a number of reasons. So I do think that we should carry out this review, and I think we'll talk a bit more about how that review should be carried out. I'm swaying towards the idea of doing a whole district review, and as Mike said, the question shouldn't be, do you want a town council in these 3 town areas? It should be, let's review the parishes themselves. Are these parishes, there will be people living on the fringes of those conurbations who might feel more commonality with the parishes that are near them than the towns that are near them. So I think those are the questions that need to be asked. But there is a job of work to be done in those areas, and I think that we can have the debate tonight. But there are thousands and thousands of people who, A, don't give these matters any thought whatsoever, and if they do give these matters some thought, it will be a question of what on earth am I going to be paying for, and is it worth it? There's the other thought of, do I really want any more councillors? And I think for many of us who've knocked on doors over a period of time, it really does bring home just how popular we are with the general public from time to time. And going out and saying, would you like to pay for more councillors, is not a particularly popular message, however much we feel they're needed. So I think there's some salutary lessons there, and it is not as simple a decision as possible from the financial perspective as well. This is a significant amount of money. And I won't go into what else we would pay for, but when we get to the point, and if we do end up setting up 3 town councils, that will cost a lot of money from reserves. And that's something that the taxpayers of the district will be interested in as well. So these aren't easy decisions. I'm convinced of the need and argument for these bodies to be set up in whatever form they may take. But I don't want anybody to be in any doubt that it's a slam dunk. There's hard roads to be walked down to actually make these things happen. But I think we should start by asking people the question and finding out what they think.
Thanks, Alex. Next, Mel.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to welcome the new town councils. That's a bit of a joke. But yeah, I just want to start off by saying it doesn't really matter what I think, because the point of it is that we're asking the question is for all of the residents to tell us what they think, and an important thing is that they have the opportunity to make that choice. But of course, I do have an opinion, but I'm not going to go into that detail now about what I think. But in terms of the option that I'd like to choose tonight, I did start with one option, and I was sort of sitting on the fence for quite a while, and I think I've just because of the nature of what we're dealing with here, we've got a very short window of time before we get to unitaries, and I think it is important that everybody does have the opportunity to have a say. So I'm kind of erring on the option 2 of the paper, but I just wanted some clarification, if that is okay, from our officer here, Mr. Archer, about some of the wording in there, if that's okay. So, wait one sec. It says a district-wide review focusing on the unparished areas of Canterbury, Herne Bay and Whitstable, which is great, but once you sort of read into the text, it says a comprehensive review covering all unparished areas and those parish councils that have adjacent parish boundaries. So does that mean that those parished areas will have the opportunity to do the questionnaire, if you like, or are they just being engaged with? Because then that sort of brings the numbers up and also sort of changes the goalposts, if you like, because then you're not sort of asking the unparished residents, you're asking the unparished and the parished. So there's 2 sets of questions there, and it feels like it might muddy the waters a little bit. So I'm sort of, is that something that would be decided in the next general purposes about how that is sort of addressed? Or will that go to full council? I just wanted some clarification on that. I have got a few more points, so shall I stop there?
Yeah, let's come back and get an answer for that if we can, and then if you come straight back in, Mel.
Thank you, Chair. So the answer to that would be it's a review about the governance arrangements across the district. So anybody can respond, and you would naturally ask the adjacent parishes what they think about their own boundaries vis-a-vis the unparished areas as well. You know, do they have a view? As they'll obviously have a keen local knowledge of whether the boundary works for them, whether the sense of community that they feel goes beyond the current boundary, perhaps into an unparished area, or whether they're supportive of a town or parish council adjacent to their existing boundary, and if so, what do they think that should look like? So you'd be asking, taking the steer that we're receiving and that we heard from council, a very open question about what should the governance arrangements look like in the locality. So you're moving away from the sort of binary question of town council or no town council. It's a much broader question and one that requires, I would say, a different level of sophistication in terms of how that feedback is analysed and recommendations that follow.
Okay.
Camille.
Yes, okay, come back. Yeah, I sort of get that. I mean, that there is always going to be a binary question at the end: do you want it or do you not want it? And you know, so if somebody's in a parish area already, they can't answer that question, can they? So I just wondering, because they've already, well, I guess they could, but they've already got one. They're already in a parish, if you know what I mean. So it's kind of like they're biased, and just sort of, you know, are you kind of? Is it making sense what I'm trying to get at?
Just to say they could have both views at the same time. They could say, for example, I support the principle of a town council or not, but actually I don't think the boundaries as they currently sit are the right boundaries, and I would like to redraw the boundaries in the area and come back with a very open response that doesn't necessarily tick boxes. It's a narrative that describes the potential boundaries, where they might be, and their reasons for that, and then that would have to be analysed alongside all the other responses.
Okay, so just in terms of, you know, the process of whatever we decide tonight, it will go to General Purposes Committee, and then that will be, terms of reference will be drawn up. I mean, will there, so how, you know, how, when we get to the detail of how this questionnaire is, that's still not, hasn't been written in stone, as it were. We've still got an opportunity to have, well, the working group would do that. But, and just sort of concerned about what I'm actually voting for tonight. I don't want to sort of like, you know, I know what kind of option that I want to go for, I feel is right for the district. I don't want to be doing the tiny detail sort of thing.
Just to clarify,
Yeah.
the debate today is about assigning the money needed to do that piece of work. It will then be, in theory, agreed by council. It will become the process and hopefully a working group formed, which would inform the general purposes debate. So the terms and the scope of it will be defined by that group, assuming that it gets agreement from council and guided by general purposes. Tonight's decision is about the allocation of funds to do that and the means by which we start that ball rolling if we give delegated authority to joint chief executives to appoint someone on our behalf.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. That's quite a good piece of clarification there. So that we will come back to that if I can, Chris, at the very end. Yeah, but be really clear on that before we go there. Charlotte, yeah, and then come back.
Can I come back?
Well,
or should I come back?
Come back in a minute. Yeah, okay, Charlotte.
All right. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll come back in a minute.
I appreciate some of our contributions might go a little bit beyond the immediate and prescient decision in the paper, because as it goes to general purposes and later full council, we may not get as good an opportunity to flesh out some of the detail or our contribution. So hence why I think these questions are worth asking now. And I'm really happy for us to frame the debate and continue to do that in this way. We've given this whole matter a lot of thought, both in public and in private, and I really did find it very helpful to listen to colleagues' comments at recent full council, took notes on everyone's contribution. And one theme that came through very clearly was that our engagement must be excellent. We must engage every household. Something must reach every doormat. No resident can be left behind in at least having the opportunity to understand what local government reorganisation could mean and the risk of democratic deficit. We live in really strange times, and social media thrives on hostility towards politicians, towards us, quite often. And many people will no doubt argue that having fewer councillors under a unitary authority is no bad thing at all. Yet, often when you ask people about their parish councillor, most people will say they do a really good job. It's a job very few people volunteer to do, and one that I appreciate many busy working people cannot afford to do. Of course, whilst acknowledging that, it's still possible to represent whilst not being yourself representative. Now, hyper-local representation really does matter. I absolutely agree with that. But selling that case to the public is going to be a lot harder than we assume. It means the language we use really matters. It must be clear, it must be thoughtful, it must be independent of any local groups. We must not be defensive, we must not be patronising. Now, I remain absolutely agnostic on town councils myself. I've lived in a village with a parish council. It was a complete dud, a decades-running local joke, far more Vicar of Dibley than anything like Faversham. However, I've also seen excellent local town councils in action, some really locally. I've also worked on cases of local parishes where the clerk swallowed 80% of the precept, or indeed where everyone employed by the parish council appeared to be related. So I'm genuinely a full-fat agnostic here, and I think perhaps it's best that I stay that way for the next 18 months. To the agenda item then, I'd rather consult on all our unparished areas at once. So to the current proposal, I won't be voting to go in stages. But at a time where cost of living pressures are forcing families to cancel their children's clubs, cut back on rare takeaways, even turn off the heating on cold January days, it's genuinely difficult to ask some of the communities we represent to take on just the price of a coffee a week. Indeed, that's a bad phrase anyway. We'll go down like a lead balloon on some of the streets that I represent in Seasalter. There's real poverty here in many of the wards we represent, and we must never forget that. Asking people to take on a burden and taking on the burden are two really different experiences. And that's why the benefits and the costs in any communication must be absolutely transparent. And I'm placing a huge amount of trust in the working group and full council to make sure that that's true. If we talk £60 a year, and I've taken that because it's the average parish precept locally, a Canterbury-wide town council at that level could work if all wards contributed. And that might have some basic improvements, a clerk, premises, councillor expenses, and a mayor. But if Northgate, say, Barton, Wincheap, or more economically deprived areas told us in consultation they didn't want the extra costs, the financial reality changes really fast. Because a Westgate-only town council could become crucifyingly expensive, with a much higher precept just to deliver even the most basic service offer. You'd spend most of it on the mayor. So we need to be honest about that. Be really careful what you wish for. I can see a scenario where places like Westgate, even with small parts of Barton, might support a town council. St Stephen's feels more like a village sometimes. Perhaps they'd like to be a parish. St Stephen's money for St Stephen's people. And if we're talking about local and keeping it locally, then there's an awful lot to say about parishing. You might have Swalecliffe decide they want to be a parish, or merge with Chestfield. They do share a church, a train station, a primary school. Chestfield children attend Swalecliffe schools. Maybe this is one parish, not really a Whitstable Town Council. Which so leads me to my final point. We must actively offer parishing as a genuine alternative. Communities like Seasalter, for whom I am the councillor, with limited amenity, very poor transport links, may well feel their money would be better kept locally if they don't tell us to shove off completely because we asked them before and it was a resounding no then. Residents of Whitstable were really clear. It's really hard to argue for democratic renewal if we appear to ask the same question again without being honest and really clear about why those circumstances have changed. I agree with Mike, cross-party work from open-minded councillors needs to be done well to frame the question. The working group should be, hopefully, as agnostic a bunch as you can possibly muster. Okay, it needs to be done independently of interest groups, and our own communications need to be engaging. We need to try our very hardest to reach those traditionally the hardest to reach. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlotte. Appreciate that. Okay, it's Lee.
Thank you, Chair. So you'll be no doubt surprised that I'm going to agree with my colleagues. That I want to do everything at once. Everything that's been said so far I agree with. On all sides, I think the key element, thank you for the speakers tonight, I think is the engagement. I live in a fully parished area. Parish councils, like has already been said, cover a lot of things. I wrote lots of things down at full council and I've continued to write stuff down tonight, so I won't bore you with those. But one thing that hit home first of all is Councillor Solers, our Cabinet Member for Finance, is very, very careful with the purse strings. And I think when he says he's going to prepare to use reserves for such a big, large-scale project, I think that to me is an immediate green flag to move forward with something, because he says no to me a lot of times when I ask him for other things. And I think then to be really specific in my cabinet role, when I came in last year, Councillor Soul again and yourself, Alan, Councillor Baldock, you said about it is like a job. We represent the residents. And in my cabinet role, Herne Bay, for example, I do always feel a bit hard done by, Rachel. You know, we've got the King's Hall, the toilets, the bandstand, some more toilets, a table tennis club. We're trying our best. So we don't want to leave Herne Bay out. And the same with Whitstable. Yeah, and the park, Memorial Park, yeah. But I think for the job we do as a cabinet, and it is a job, is I think for me it's about making sure everyone does feel represented after. And LGR is going to completely change that landscape. So we can do all this great work in Herne Bay. We've got some other great work in Whitstable. We've got some city centre stuff going on. Unfortunately, that may not carry on with the impetus after under an authority. And rightly or wrongly, whether government's idea to force it upon us is irrelevant. We're on that journey. And to use a train acronym, I use it a lot with the parish councils. We're on the train and it's not stopping. LGR's happening. We're not going to change that. So I think we need to really get on board with the community governance reviews. And my last overriding thing, and councillors have already said it, is making sure all residents engage. It's great that community groups and vocal ex-councillors, current councillors, but unfortunately that's not going to be enough to get the positive outcomes they want. And it's making sure that we get really into the nitty-gritty. Obviously, it's excellent to hear from Councillor Grinnell there's money set aside for very deep dive comms, and I thank the officers for the report and the detail they've shared over the previous months. But if that is missed, we are unfortunately going to score a very big own goal, and we could end up with a no from everyone. I hope that's not the case, because I really like to see parish areas, town councils. I'm very much for them. So, but in the current form, unfortunately, I can't vote for the option put forward to us. I'd like to go the whole hog and get it done before LGR. Thank you.
Thanks for that. I'll let Mel come back and then back to you if I can, Pip. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, it was just, I think some of colleagues have been touching on it. I mean, of what came out from the full council, which was unanimous. There was a unanimous vote to go through with the CGR, I think. So I think a few people talked about the educational piece that we need to make sure that we cover, and that, you know, making sure that people, some people, not all, get that full understanding of what local government is and how it's all the tiers and all that sort of stuff. And I know that from our own jobs as councillors, we sometimes, you know, someone might ask a question and then they don't get the answer that they like back, but then you have to try and explain why this is that way, because you've got this committee here and the funding comes from here and you can't put that money in that pot over there. And, you know, there's so many sort of little bits and bobs that we spend most of our job trying to explain. And if we can sort of tackle some of the bigger bit of understanding when we're doing this consultation, I think that would be a good job, well done as well. I don't know how we do it. It depends on which consultant we go with. Just get a really good one, and preferably someone who's good at making videos as well, because I always think that visual element works really well. But yeah, if we can sort of tackle that understanding and educational bit as we progress through this CGR, albeit we vote on that tonight, because we haven't done that vote yet, have we?
Yeah. Thanks, Mel. Over to you, Pip.
Thank you, Chair. So mine should be the shortest contribution, seeing as people have kind of thrashed it around a fair bit. So I've been a parish councillor in a past life. The only reason I stood to be a parish councillor in my former village was because I thought there was a democratic deficit within that parish council, because there were 7 places on that parish council and there were always 6 or 7 people and they were always co-opted. And when you looked at the roll of honour, I think it's called in the village hall, it was always, I'll change the names, Farmer Giles's wife, Farmer Giles's son, and then back to Farmer Giles again. That didn't mean that they didn't take an interest in what was going on, but it was a particular focus of interest. But they were very good at things like litter picks, planning applications, the very hyper-local reporting when the bin was damaged at the bus stop, that kind of thing. And I am actually a fan. I was very cross, actually, when I stood to be that parish councillor, because I only did it on the basis that there would be 8 nominations that time and that therefore there would have to be a vote. somebody didn't put their papers in on time. So guess what? I was co-opted. So I am concerned. So when I was also struck at full council, I think it was Councillor Naomi Smith gave us some figures that out of hundreds in Kent of parish councils last time out, only a handful actually required a vote. And that does bother me. So when people talk about democratic deficit, I see two sides of that. I see the fact that yes, I don't want to see us go in the former district of Canterbury to go into a unitary as the only one without unparished areas, and I am a fan. But I'm not sure that this, hyper-local full representation is going to be an automatic thing. So I am, just to summarise, I'm not in favour of a phased approach. I'm in favour of an all-at-once approach. I'm also very interested in the educative aspect of what the review will do, and I think that's a really important thing to tease out and for us to get as right as possible. And the final thing I want to say, I think, Charlotte, you talked about what if the estates around the urban areas aren't interested, and I represent Westgate Ward, and of course we've got UNESCO World Heritage Site, we've got all sorts of jewels, we've got very active residents association and other interest groups, and I feel really privileged to represent that ward. But I also represent the London Road Estate, which doesn't have a community centre, it doesn't have a residents association, and it's only by having like a councillor who walks about the estate quite often to garner and encourage interest that we hear from those people who are often the most economically hard pressed as well. And so I've got question marks in my mind about what if the centre of my ward are really keen, and what about London Road Estate, or perhaps in Alan, in your ward, Northgate, Poets Estate, or has been mentioned, Hales Place, for example. So I do think that teasing out what. Did you call it war gaming, Councillor Soul? That's a new one to me. Yeah, so I think it's really important to look at what the different possible outcomes might be before we set out on that journey. And I understand, I think I'm right in saying, maybe Matthew, you could clarify this. If we vote on this tonight, we have a year to undertake it. My concern is if we want to do a big education piece, we're not going to know from central government until spring, late spring, what our unitary, some more detail about the unitary. I'm wondering whether we'll already be quite a long way down that road. I don't know if you've got any, can help us a bit with that. Thank you.
Yeah, do you want to come back on that, Matthew, and then...
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that the terms of reference would go to general purposes before the council meeting in April. So that would be when the button is pressed on the review. So we'd have 12 months from then as a maximum. Not all reviews take the full 12 months, so we'd have to look at the programme. Obviously, doing a whole district review were it to be requires probably more time than perhaps a shorter one. So we would have to look at the timetable. That would be included in the report to council.
Thank you. The April kind of start of the timetable reassures me somewhat. Thank you.
Did you want to add to that point, Chris, before I just say a couple of bits, then Peter's going to come back as well. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I'm joining the agnostic camp, actually, really, to be truthful, because I can see the way that the debate is going tonight. And I was quite interested because many of the speakers tonight, and this is not meant criticism because you have your opinion, same as I have mine, but immediately played the three places off against each other. Yet you said many of the debates was about being united and all wanting the same thing. but Herne Bay wanted more and Whitstable, you know? And I thought that's what's been troubling me and keeps me awake at night, if you like, is this division that this could potentially, if we don't handle this right, set in place. And I worry about that a lot, actually. I want to do what is right for the people of this district, but everybody in this district, and I think Pip touches on a number of things also that worry me a lot. It's about the people that can't afford the extra precept, have never paid that precept before, do not fall into the council tax band that, or the income band that gets their council tax paid. It's just another money going out. And, you know, all of those things need a strong narrative to go with them if it's going to go over the line. I worry about division. I worry about that. I worry about the inclusivity. I worry about the way that we spend maybe £300,000 worth of public money, how people view that as well. So I think it is honest with you all that I have my concerns, but it makes me work even harder to make sure that the will of this council and my cabinet, that I respect the views of enormously, are able to carry me with them on that journey, which they believe is the right thing to do. And I hope that I will be convinced that it is the right thing to do from the agnostic camp, to be quite honest with you. So that is honest and straightforward, because I think it's not right that I don't share my opinion with you with that. So, Peter, can you take Beefy Bits? You want to come back on that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to be very clear, and I think the conversation at full council suggests some of this. Some of the councillors tonight have said it. Definitely, members of the public have said it. There's definitely an emphasis, an increasing emphasis on the education and the engagement side of things. The £290,000, and Chris made it very clear, indicative. You couldn't have said it many more times. It is indicative. Is based on quite a base level of that engagement and consultation. And I think if there's more and more, and the pushing, and I think as Pip said, pushing into areas where they may not be looking at the social media of a council website, or coming along to council meetings, or rocking up to Westgate Hall to go and find out, something's going on. If you start pushing more and more into that, and if General Purposes starts pushing more and more into that in terms of reference, those costs will be increasing by the magnitude of 52,000 times however many extra people we need to be able to get in and do it. So just a word of caution, and it will be for General Purposes to recommend that through to council, but the more we push on this full engagement at this stage or at a later stage, we're going to have to consider the amount of resources. The point of the resources part of this, and again for how Chris itemised it out, was there is not capacity within the officer base to be able to pick up the additional work. So any additional cost through this is additional work, not least because of LGR. And again, I think officers appreciate this is coming on the back of, particularly the speed and need for it is on the back of the LGR debate. But we've also got to focus on that, and there will be a mandate from government for us to focus on that, as well as potentially this coming through. So the additional costs, I think, could spiral and keep going up. And that's something we just need to keep an eye on and try and manage as we go through the next stages, whether that is full or phased, depending on what happens tonight.
Thanks for that clarity, Peter. Appreciated. Charlotte?
Sorry, it's Peter, to point of clarity on what you'd said. You said the costs given tonight indicatively by Chris represented a base level of engagement. I'd like you to flesh out what that means, because that really worries me. We heard quite strongly from full council that they wanted a quite deep dive level of engagement. And so what is a base level of engagement? Because if the costs are going to spiral, well, General Purposes and full council later need to be really aware of what the consequences of that spiral fiscally means.
Can I just add one thing to Charlotte? And I think that all the way along here, we may still not end up with the town councils. That has to be said. I mean, the public may very clearly say no, and I think that is something that we must balance with our judgment as well. We all might agree they're a good thing, but we may have to take the public opinion. So perhaps you could balance that out, Chris and Peter, if you want to come back on that.
Yeah, and it's a good question. What I suppose we based it on is previous work where you're assuming probably in each of the urban centres some form of engagement and consultation events led by an officer in that sort of Q&A sort of style that we've done previously. Sending out bits and pieces through, meeting with groups or whatever. But I think the idea that we'll be able to go around wards within unparished areas and hold events in community centres and that sort of side of things isn't what this is based on. This is based on the sort of traditional find a centre of the urban centres, put on an event, expect people to come along and listen to it, social media, send stuff out at the appropriate time using it post, and that is budgeted in. That 60,000 is based on the fact that we want to make sure it gets to people, so we'll be using our own way of sending mail out rather than relying on sort of just targeted postal drops. That side of it would be covered with that 60,000, but that sort of person to person is based on the idea it's done in one part of an urban centre, in each of the urban centres being described at whatever time they happen, but not going further and further out into the areas that are unparished.
Thanks. I'm going to take Chris and then Mike, please.
There seems to be in the debate a kind of a general consensus in supporting going across the whole way. I think as somebody who ran the community governance review last time, I am still a little scarred from the process, but I'm certainly a lot wiser from it. And there is an argument to say that in a phased model, you leave the coast behind. There's also an argument to say the coast has had its chance, or at least Whitstable has had a chance before. It was the trailblazer. And actually, what it showed as a process was that, to be honest, as a council, in some ways, we failed. We wrote to every household. We did consultations in local areas. There were community groups and activists who knocked on every door. 97% of people didn't bother to engage. They didn't tell us, and it was very difficult as a group of elected councillors to then decide if you should choose to put somebody else in a taxable situation. I'm quite happy to have one of Joe's hats wherever he's got them. But I think that my experience from the Whitstable one was that one of the challenges of that, and there's still challenges about how the council engage, was that the less that you know about what the final thing is going to be, what the indicative cost is going to operate like, how things are going to operate, the harder it is to get somebody to have an opinion on it one way or the other. And I can't personally understand how potentially tripling the number of people that we have to ask at one time is going to increase the engagement. I could argue that actually it might make it harder. Because as Peter's indicated, what we may have is something which covers a larger area but is not necessarily as detailed. And I kind of agree with Charlotte, but I found it quite useful to have the debate with councillors last time. But the two things that I picked out were that everybody wanted engagement, everybody wanted an education piece, but more importantly, everybody wanted something different. And they all suggested we should engage, we shouldn't engage with parish councils. We could have areas which would split down by estates rather than wards. We had people who wanted town councils and people who wanted smaller areas. And I think that that level of nuanced, sophisticated conversation in order to be able to really engage with people requires time. And I think it requires us as a council to learn about how successfully we engage with people and maybe sometimes change that up. I'm personally in favour of a phase model, not because I think it's leaving one set behind, because I think that there is a way in which you could do a second phase which would bind the new authority, but more because I think that that level of engagement needs to be deep. And particularly in Canterbury, the question is quite complicated. Like in Whitstable, it was relatively simple. Do you want a town council or not? We fixed the, somebody else had fixed the geography for us. In Canterbury, the geography isn't fixed. There's a large number of associated and adjoining parishes which may have an opinion. There are whole wards which are full of estates which feel very different and admit that they feel that they feel very different. There is the whole question about the Lord Mayor and where the Lord Mayor should or shouldn't go, or who should pay for them, in terms of complexity. And I kind of feel that if we were to do an exercise, Canterbury would be quite a substantive piece in itself. I think that that piece of work would be informed and strengthened by the experience that we had in Whitstable. And I can't help but feel that anything which happened in the second wave wouldn't be informed and improved by the work that we potentially did in Canterbury. And I think it's really important that if we're going to spend that amount of money, we're able to get more than 3% of people who have an opinion. Because what will damage democracy most is if we ask a question, it's not clear, and then indicatively we decide to make a really clear, substantive decision and force people into what is quite a difficult financial situation for some people. So as a politician, I think it's probably easy to say, let's have everybody, let's do it all in one go, and let's not leave anyone behind. But as a policy maker, as somebody who would have to take this piece of work through, my experience in Whitstable is that it is complicated, and doing it for everybody all at once may make it weaker as an exercise. And that I think that level of sophistication is really what's important. So on a practical basis, I'm of the opinion that we should have a phased model, but a two-phase, and with some way which we could bind the new authority. That's where I'm at.
Thanks, Chris. Mike, please. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to talk a bit about the money. This is a lot of money, and we could probably all think of a lot of other things we'd like to do with this money, but I don't believe we've got a choice. If we don't agree to do a community governance review tonight, there are 20 people over there who will be out with petitions, getting those numbers up. And we'll be asked to do one for Canterbury next week, and then in 2 months' time, one for Whitstable, and then a few months later, one for Herne Bay. We'll be running 3 different community governance reviews, all at the same time. We won't be controlling what's going out when across the district. It will be more expensive and more complicated. I think the decision would be taken out of our hands if we don't take that decision tonight. And whilst I don't want to spend any more money than we need to on a exercise that maybe seem to be wasteful, I don't think we've got a choice. We're going to have to spend that money, and if we don't take the decision to spend it tonight, or when we get round to it at full council, then we will end up spending more and making it a much more complicated job for ourselves.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I think actually that this point articulated there, my earlier point about division, you know, if the result is not to do it, I think we end up with 3 very divided communities potentially, and areas of those communities also very divided as well. So we need to go into that doing the best job we can, and hope that we can carry forward those people that are, if you like, angst by the opinion that was actually the opinion of the widest amount of population on a very small percentage of people, which was the case in Whitstable. Do you remember what that was in Whitstable? I can't remember what it was quite. Does any have you got an idea of the actual response rate in Whitstable?
We had about 1,800 responses to the stage 1 consultation.
So that was about how many percentage of the population?
Yes, well, the 7.5% petition threshold for the electorate of the area was something in the region of 2,000.
Yeah, so not too far off that. So that's fine. Okay, that's good. Yeah, thanks, Mel. Go for it. Yeah.
Just one little, just sort of rowing back a bit. I mean, tonight is a decision to decide whether we're going to give residents the opportunity to choose what they would like or not. Not whether we're not deciding whether they're going to have a town council tonight or not. So we're just talking about that choice. that democratic choice. That's what we're talking about. Whether we like it or not, whether we think it's expensive or not, what the outcome's going to be doesn't matter. That what we're voting on, what we're saying is that we want residents to have that choice, because we've been by the government, our government, asked to go to unitaries, and now we're presented in this situation now that it's a completely different situation to the one that was last year or whatever. So I think the fundamental thing that we need to just remember what we're doing is that we're just voting for a democratic choice, a right for people to choose if they want it or not, and then we go to the next stage of whether that's going to be a town council or not. So, and as with any consultation, it's only fair that when you given that decision or given that paper to answer questions, you're given as much information as possible. That's a given, whether we say we want it to be a big one or not. That's what we're supposed to do in a consultation. You don't give half the information. It has to be all the information so people can make a real informed choice about what they want. So before we sort of go looking into the future or whatever, where it's going to end up, I think just row back a little bit and think about what that option is. But anyway, that's just...
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, Mel. I think that we are where we are. You know, this is a point about consultation, isn't it, if you like, for that point. Charlotte.
Just if we do vote tonight to proceed straight away with all three areas, and obviously the accounting for that will have to come to budget. Because, as I've previously expressed, I'm very agnostic, and I can hear all the bad ideas about it and all the good ideas about it. And I do this a lot, but I'll be hoping at budget, if we bring forward money to do a full fat CGR, that it gets cross-party support and that we get that budget through in order to do that. I really wouldn't want, if full council are not behind us doing this CGR, I don't want to proceed, and I want to hear that support full throttle at the budget.
Absolutely, I totally agree with that point, and that feeds into that other part. What I'm going to do is to ask Chris to sum up where we are. Then we need to do a vote, don't we? Whether that falls and if that vote falls, then we need to do another vote. And I feel that it's probably the way we're going to be. But so if you could sum it up, Chris, highlight where you are, and then we'll come back to Vanessa for the first vote. Thanks.
Well, it's difficult to summarise, but I think we've had a useful conversation, and I think that this will be the first of many conversations as we kind of define things. I think the first is, if we're happy, based around what the majority decision seems to be around the table, I'll amend the recommendation for a vote. But I'd like to kind of do two things, so to speak. So I'll make a recommendation about what option we proceed with, and then we can have a vote. And then what I recommend is I'll then make some additional recommendations, which is the how, so to speak, of which we can do. So I think based on the conversation, there is a support for the all-in concept rather than necessarily the phased one. So if that's the case, I'd like to bring to vote the recommendation as it is read here, that this council commits up to £290,000 in the 26-27 budget to be drawn down from the Budget Stabilisation Reserve for a district-wide community governance review, focusing on the unparished areas of Canterbury, Herne Bay and Whitstable, to consider the creation of a town and or parish councils along other options. Could I have a second for that?
Seconded.
And could we take that then to a vote?
And that was carried, Chair, so that's 7-4 and 1 abstention.
And then secondly, can I make two additional recommendations which we can vote on? That a councillor working group be formally established to support the pre-planning and delivery of the CGR reporting to General Purposes Committee, and that delegated authority be granted to a joint chief executive to appoint a consultant to support officers in the pre-planning and delivery of a community governance review. Do we need to take those separately?
Yeah, I'm happy to second that. So. Good. Matthew, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, just one point of clarification. The first of those recommendations would be a recommendation to council to form the working group, because ultimately the CGR would be a council function and would then trickle down to general purposes. And the delegated authority to appoint the consultant, that could be a resolution from this committee, which would enable us to kickstart the process and start with the pre-planning and delivery of the CGR in advance of terms of reference being agreed.
I think that's infinitely sensible, to be fair.
Let's do it as two separate ones then.
Okay, Chris.
So can
Leave it with him.
we have a vote on that a councillor working group be formally established to support the pre-planning and delivery of the CGR, reporting to the General Purposes Committee?
That's carried unanimously, Chair.
Thank you. And then a further vote on that delegated authority be granted to a joint chief executive to appoint a consultant to support officers in the pre-planning and delivery of the community governance review.
And that's also carried unanimously.
You've been going for it. Does anyone want to get some more water or anything like that just for a minute? Obviously, some people are leaving. So the statement of community involvement and things like that, and draft housing strategy has not got quite the same buzz as the first bit. So we're yeah. I mean, we're going to be here, aren't we? Yeah, join us. So we're streaming again now? Thank you. Okay, item 8 on the agenda then. Infinitely less complicated, I think. So, no public speakers. To consider the report, the joint execs. I can just simply propose that the Statement of Community Involvement 2026 updated as Appendix A in our notes is adopted, and I think we all realise that this is actually just a piece of work we need to do to keep our consultation papers and the background papers absolutely spot on as we go towards the local plan. I think it's been thoroughly reviewed now. I don't think we've got any problems with that. I think you're all happy with that. If we're all happy with that, I think we just need to approve that revised document, if you like, that is ready for use. So, second, please, if you wouldn't mind.
I'll
Thanks,
second that.
Mike. Yeah, appreciate that. That's good. Okay.
That's been carried unanimously, Chair.
This is much more interesting now. The draft housing strategy, permission to consult. I'm going to hand this one over to Pip, if that's okay with you, to bring that one forward, and we can hopefully agree that as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. So item 9, permission to consult. So I'm pleased to introduce the draft housing strategy 2026 to 2030 and to ask Cabinet to approve the principles for consultation. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you. So the Council's housing, homelessness and rough sleeping strategy has expired, and an up-to-date housing strategy is needed to address new government policies, our corporate plan and the draft local plan. I am, as always, indebted to our talented and committed officers for the production of this report, especially Gary Peskett, our Housing Strategy Manager. Although no longer a statutory requirement, the housing strategy remains the key policy document that underpins and links all the Council's housing-related strategies and policies. We've decided to separate the housing strategy from the homelessness and rough sleeping strategy to enable us to address the requirements of the Homelessness Reduction Act, and that document will be forthcoming soon. This document is primarily aimed at councillors, council officers, planners, developers, registered providers, advocacy groups, etc., rather than the public. I just wanted to draw attention in particular, and for the record, to paragraphs 5, 5.8 and 5.9 in particular. They address urban area and estate regeneration opportunities and supporting strategic development at Wincheap commercial area. These paragraphs look to provide some detail and flags Canterbury City Council's commitment to these brownfield initiatives, which are key parts of our draft local plan. Once adopted, this document will be primarily used as a reference document for planners, developers, registered providers, etc. The next stage in the process would be to consult for 12 weeks until the 14th of April, and overview will be used as a consultee on the 12th of Feb. It'll come back to us in June to seek approval to adopt this draft housing strategy. Don't know if you have any questions, either of myself or of the officers. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Mel.
Yes, not really a question, it's a sort of comment, really. I mean, I thought it was a great report. It's got some really good stats in there, some really good details. I kind of what I appreciate. I mean, you know, there's so much to look at in our housing strategy, but I'm just focusing on one area of it that I do appreciate that hopefully we'll get more of a look in is the private renter sector, and of course with the new renters bill coming, well, it's already in. You know, it wasn't surprising to see that more people are selling up and more properties going out in the market. And I just, from my own experience of friends that I know, I mean, a lot of people find that the average rent is really high and not able to afford it. So, you know, looking at that, especially with some of the conditions that they might also be living in as well. Some really poor conditions, mould and all sorts of things. And, you know, and there's just hasn't been that sort of strength of legislation to sort of get things to change. So I'm kind of pleased to be seeing a bit more on that. I'd be interested to see what responses we get back on that element as well. Yeah, that's just about it really. But yeah, looking forward to the consultation and hearing back from you and the officers.
Yeah, definitely. Just remind us when the consultation ends, if you could. I'm trying to flick it first. It's 12 weeks or 8 weeks?
I think if we approve it tonight, I think it's the would run until the 14th of April.
14th of April, that's great. Thanks for that. So people listening tonight, if they want to make a comment, they've got till the 14th of April. That's fantastic. Okay, hopefully some positive stuff and obviously any views. So just Chris, is it? Chris, thank you, Chris. Go ahead.
I appreciate we're putting this out for consultation, but could I just seek clarification about 5.8 and the urban areas and estate regeneration opportunities? So obviously anytime we talk about this, it seems like massive exercises which look like they're going to fundamentally shift everything. And I think that the point here is quite useful in suggesting that there are a series of questions that we need to establish before we look at any estate regeneration in the wider whole, how you pay for it, what kind of occupancy you're looking for, what your ambition is for a space. But can I just confirm, when we say effectively that we're looking at preparatory work beginning within the next 3 years, is that just for the 2 estates listed in the latter paragraph, which so we're just looking for the Craddock Road estate and the Spring Lane estate? Or do we have a list of areas that we'd like to do this piece of work on that we would do within the 3 years?
Gary, you've got a update there?
Yes, is the short answer. We're working up a list of areas that we think will be most suitable for area regeneration, and obviously as the draft strategy identifies, given what's happened with the right to buy and the fragmentation of ownership, etc., it becomes a very, very complex project to undertake. So the lead-in time is obviously going to be quite significant, really.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, definitely. Any other comments by anybody? 'Cause I think we just hopefully get some good feedback from the public. Fairly long time to do, so it'll be useful to go. And then and the path after that, does that come back to us? Doesn't it? I think cabinet, isn't it? Yeah, they're really good. So come back again and we can have a look at the final one. Okay, let's do it.
And that's carried unanimously, Chair.
Okay, so we seamlessly moved now to part B of our agenda. So no more public speakers this time. So item 10, again, is I'm going to leave this one with Pip to take forward. Another exciting piece of work that I'm absolutely made up over. The Older Persons Accommodation Working Group outcomes and recommendations, I think, I say now, just before Pip starts, incredible piece of work over a very long period of time. But I think the thoroughness of it and the range of it and the way that it's been handled has been immensely helpful for such a difficult and, yeah, it's just a difficult piece of work, really well handled. So Pip, can you take it up and explain where we are with it, please? Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. So this item comes for resolution. So I propose that Cabinet approves the outcomes and recommendations of the report of the Councillor Working Group on Older Persons Accommodation. Do I have a seconder, please?
Seconded.
Thank you. In my time as a councillor, apart from the draft local plan, I've not come across any policy, plan or proposal that has had more thorough or painstaking examination than this. starting with a politically balanced working group sponsored by the Council's former policy committee in 2021, the work has continued under the new administration with conclusions and recommendations finalised by Overview's sponsored working group at the end of last year. I want to thank publicly all councillors, former and current, who've contributed over those 4 years, especially former councillor Joe Howes, didn't know he was going to make an appearance this evening on another matter, who was the initial chair, and the current chair, Councillor Naomi Smith, and to stalwart councillor Jean Butcher, who was a golden thread running throughout the whole thing. 4 political parties have sat and worked together to great effect to agree and endorse the recommendations. If it was a joint production by councillors, it was also very much a joint production by officers, as input was needed from several different teams, and the whole was brought together by our housing strategy manager. It's always a pleasure to read a document that ably sets out the issues, challenges, opportunities in such a way as to inexorably lead the reader to the conclusions and recommendations in the way this report has done. And I thank you, Gary Peskett, for your sterling work on this. You'll have seen and read the background papers, so I'm not going to delve into them. Suffice it to report that tenant representative groups, as well as Overview, who sponsored this piece of work, have already read and endorsed it unanimously. Implementation of Phase 1 will mean service redesign for our 4 Sheltered Plus schemes to bring them in line with our other sheltered housing schemes, which includes replacing night reassurance and laundry services. If you agree this evening, the next stage in the process will be to inform the affected tenants and staff of the decision, finalise and agree support plans, which will be undertaken on a one-to-one basis to make sure the changes will be as smooth as possible, review tenancy agreements to reflect any changes needed, plan the implementation of Phase 1, and finally to monitor and adapt the implementation and mitigation measures as necessary. So I'll stop here and I'll pass over to officers to fill in with more detail if needed and to answer any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, please do make comment, Marie or Gary, if you've... Yeah. Just any questions? And yeah, any comments, anybody? We're happy. Mel and then Chris, please.
I just want to again say what a great engagement concert. The whole process of all of this was being really, really thorough and really well done. And it's a long way from my portfolio. And I look from afar and just so I kind of I just wanted to make a comment that I just really appreciate the amount of work that went into it and the amount of engagement that you were, actually going and having individual one-to-one meetings and all that sort of stuff. It's quite formidable. Yep.
Yeah, do you want to come back on that, Pip, and then I'll let Chris make.
Yes, I think I just want to say that with the previous item and with this, it's kind of a little bit of a two-edged sword because there's so much fantastic work goes on in the background and kind of nails so much of it that there is, in some senses, little for Cabinet to be able to pick up on at this stage. It's not that we, I want to stop anyone from, making a comment if they want to and need to, or to ask a question. But I do just think it's been such a superb report that it's kind of all laid out there for us. Thank you.
Go for it, Chris. Thanks.
It's now a challenge if I have to come up with something which isn't fundamentally laid out. I had just 2 quick questions, one of which was the financial implications in 7 and the changes to the night reassurance service. You talk about effectively once the decision's made, we might need to look at some of the replacement of that and capital contributions before we can effectively decide how that would influence what the service costs would be. When is it our indication to have that new service costs fixed? Is it going into the new financial year, or is it having agreed all the changes to move in? And then the second of which I'm sure that residents will feel confident and will we'll like hearing that it's a medium to long-term requirement to look at the long-term financial viability of each of these sites in stage 2, but it says both it's a medium-term and a long-term requirement. In what kind of timescales do we expect we get to stage 2 on? Are we looking at a 5-year? Are we looking at a 10-year? For stage 2, obviously a lot of work's been done on phase 1, but also as a result, a lot of people have seen how council can proactively engage with people in quite a kind of a positive way about this. So just having some kind of certainty as to how far down the line that might be useful.
Yeah, please come back on that's Gary. Thanks.
Okay, maybe if I take the second one first, because that's probably more straightforward. That will really be something for the new council to decide on. I mean, it's going to be a minimum of, I think, 3 years before one can sensibly start looking at phase 2. We need to, in the meantime, probably start prioritising what that programme will look like based on the sort of principles contained in the report. So looking at the same issues, doing a scorecard, and actually coming up with a staged list of the reviews. And in terms of the cost of replacement services such as improved lifelines, CCTV, we're actively working up those costs now, working on the specification for what that service will look like, and we will actually want to actively engage with the residents as well to consult with them on what that will look like. So that's likely, I suspect, to come forward in the new financial year. The housing budget report that is out for consultation now basically undertakes that we will probably have to come back during the year with proposals emanating from the older persons accommodation review, because we didn't want it to appear that we had taken any decision for granted and that we were respecting the due decision-making process. So there's a little bit of ground to cover still during the start of the new year, but we will be coming back to councillors with further information.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, doesn't it? Any other comments? So, okay, in that case, we can take a vote on that.
That's being carried unanimously, Chair.
Thanks, Vanessa. Okay, item 11 now is the 2024-25 annual corporate plan performance report and adoption of the new KPIs. So this is going to be with Alex, with Peter in as backup, if need be. So again, I like this a lot, actually. It's a good reflection, I think, of our corporate plan and the very, very different approach this administration has taken from any other council in Kent, I think, and particularly not that many up and down the country. So really proud of it. Take it away.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I should offer thanks to Stacey Wells, who's been through a huge amount of this process of getting it to this point, and was mercifully released from having to attend this evening, as Peter said that he would take the bulk of it. So I'll pass over to him for his 45-minute presentation in a second. But I think this has been in front of us in a couple of forms 3 or 4 times now, and it's been through scrutiny and overview, and there's still some processes to go. This is actually the decision or the state we're in at the moment is the format that we're looking at. Is, are we happy with the format of this report rather than are we happy with the KPIs, which I think was maybe provided a little bit of confusion in some of the conversations. And having been in some of those meetings and had feedback from other of those meetings, some people thought it was oversimplified. Some people thought it was too complicated. Some people thought there were things in there that they wanted to keep. Some people thought there was too much information in there, that it was and I think going through this process, you've got that wide difference of views. There wasn't a consensus of what people didn't like about it, but there was a consensus of what people did like about it, which is, I think, that we're reporting on things that have been asked for, that where we have faced a lot of scrutiny in a lot of areas. And I can talk about the specific example of where I've been thoroughly grilled on transport issues. And people have said, well, what are we substituting train journeys and bus journeys for our car parks? And I said, well, actually, that's a good thing to report on. We don't control the number of train passengers. We don't necessarily control the number of bus passengers, but it is always part of the conversation. And if we're reporting on the health of our district, then we should report on the things that we touch as well as the things that we control, I think is the point. And that's the ethos that goes through this whole report, is that we really want, and I think it's particularly strong in some of the environmental conditions as well, there's stuff in there that we want to report on. And I think if people say, well, you don't control this, why are you reporting on it? And it's because we don't act in isolation. And when we look at our performance, we want to make sure that we understand the effect we're having on the district as a whole, and even wider with this, on the country, on the world, on the environment as a whole as well, because this is a report that looks very closely at our performance, but also looks very closely at where we sit as part of that greater whole. And I hope, without claiming too much for the report as it stands, that it at least begins that process of understanding Canterbury's place in the world, as well as what it is that we should be held to account to, quite rightly. You'll see in there's a lot of the new measures we don't have historical data for yet, and that's because we want to start building the historical data. And I think what we want to do tonight is get to the point where we can note this, resolve to adopt the proposed KPIs, then that goes to the scrutiny committee. I'll do that properly in a minute, by the way, and get a seconder if that's okay. Sorry, I felt the nervousness. Would you like me to do it now, since I've mentioned it? Is it all right? I'll do that. But I think we can get to the point where we adopt this, we start working, we can get to that point where, and then we come back and have a look at these, and then we can actually see where those measures are. But the final thing I want to say about this is this has been a really collaborative process throughout. The councillors who've obviously looked at it in public, but also working with the officers as well, we made sure that we went back to everybody within those teams. We asked them what it is that they want to be measured on. We asked them what it is that they think about when they're working, what it is that they want to be, what it is that appears in their own appraisals at the end of the year. Because there's not much point in us taking decisions if the people that are actually doing, let's face it, doing the actual work, aren't really being measured on the things that we want to be measured on as well. So I think this brings us as councillors closer to what the officers are doing, and hopefully that means that we can make some better decisions and some better policy, and hopefully that resonates more with people. So when we talk about what it is that we want to improve in this district, that's what everybody's aligned to do as well. So I think I may have made some slight overclaims for it, but that was what we set out to do. I think it's a really, really good document. I think presentationally, I think it's really nicely done as well. And I am very hard to please on that kind of thing. I think it's a wonderful piece of work, and I commend it to you. So I'll now do the official form of words. To resolve or note the annual impact report for 2024-25, and to resolve to adopt the proposed KPIs for 2025-26 to 2027-28. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Chair. I'm happy with that. Do we want to? Sorry, that's your line, isn't it? I'll pass back.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. I'll just say, it's a good opportunity, I think, and I like. Well, you picked it up in your words, didn't you, about the fact that this, not only it reads well, it's got some great examples in it. It brings things to life, and I think it's great that we actually have the SDGs reference as well, because whatever wokiness we get accused of, we are part of this world, aren't we? And I think we start this process with whatever we do affects the world one way or the other, doesn't it? And I think it's good to do that. I'm really pleased that officers can see what things they're affecting, the fact that they reflect on those when they create the reports that we actually have. All of those things, it just is a piece of continuous work that is in the same direction, the same vein, and the same thought process from beginning to end. And I think councillors are often accused of not doing that. And we've worked really hard with a fantastic team of officers to actually start to achieve that more often than not. And I think we should be pleased with that. It doesn't mean to say we got it right all the time or we're smug or whatever. We're certainly not. But we are getting it right in this piece of work as well. So really proud of it, really pleased with it. I think the team that are involved in it, I think we can formally maybe make sure that they are thanked by yourself, Peter, and Susie. Make sure that they do know that we do appreciate it, and it's an exceptional piece of work that is cutting edge and is an example to other councils. Maybe we can sell that to our new unitary authority as a basis for their reports as well. Wouldn't that be amazing? It really would. So there we go. So, okay. Do we need to, anyone else want to say anything else, or have I hogged it and Alex has over promised again or whatever? if not.
Just going to say.
Yeah, go on, Mel.
Just going to say, can't wait till next year for the next report.
When's the next one, Alex?
It'll be about this time next year, I would imagine.
Not sooner. Sorry, no, joking. Okay, that's fine. So we just note this, don't we? So we don't need to do anything at all.
No, we've got.
Have we got a vote?
We have got a resolution. Second part of it.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Beg your pardon.
And to resolve.
Oh, and to resolve. It just confused me, the wording. So we've got a vote on it. Never mind. We're happy with that, so that's fine.
And that's been carried unanimously, Chair.
Okay. Item 12 now, isn't it? This is the next act of the Pip Hazleton show. Yeah, that's okay. So, tenancy engagement strategy adoption, please. If you could fill us in details there, Pip, and we take that forward.
Thank you, Chair. So tonight I seek approval to resolve that the tenant engagement strategy, as set out in Appendix C, is adopted. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So this strategy sets out how we will involve our social housing tenants in shaping, influencing and scrutinising our housing services. We held a 12-week consultation last year and now seek approval for the final strategy. It responds to the revised consumer standards, builds on our tenant engagement framework and our refreshed housing promise and service standards to inform a clear offer to our tenants. You'll remember that in November 25, we received our Regulator for Social Housing inspection judgment, which rated us as C3, meaning we were not compliant and had weakness or serious failings in one or more areas. This final strategy reflects the consultation feedback, input from tenants, and our commitment to meeting regulatory inspections. We know that the best way to improve our housing services is by listening to our tenants and leaseholders. We want to encourage residents from all backgrounds to get involved in shaping services and to turn their priorities into reality, whether it be from the quality of our housing repairs service to communicating using plain English, from helping people feel safe in their homes to supporting our most vulnerable tenants. So the next stage in the process, if approved by Cabinet this evening, is that the strategy will be implemented with immediate effect. Thank you.
Thanks. We need to resolve that, don't we? So, yeah, so need a seconder, please. That's good. Oh, we did. Sorry. That's okay. Let's distract you. Anyone comments at all on that? I'll have to take that one forward. So again, it's a piece of work, a piece of document that seems to got a bit of work to do on it, but that's just text, isn't it? Okay. Does every tenant get one of those, by the way? Just out of interest. Does every tenant have one of those given to them or emailed them, or is that one of those documents, or? Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Yeah. Yeah. Ah.
I'm so sorry, Chair. I completely misheard what you said and it didn't make any sense in my brain at all. Sorry, does every tenant get a copy? And I think the confirmation from comms is that yes, they do. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. Sorry. That's not the only thing that. Sorry. Yeah, okay, that's really good. No, I appreciate that. So obviously they're going to know about that in the next tenant news and that'll be flagged up accordingly. Yeah, fantastic. Okay. We need to resolve that. Yeah, we need to resolve that. So we'll vote on accepting that, please.
And that's carried unanimously, Chair.
Okay, and now we have the final act tonight from is Lee's act tonight, and again an interesting piece of work going on that we can get some detail on. Item 13, property disposals programme 26 to 27. I'll leave you to summarise, please, Lee, and then obviously there's 2 votes on it. There's 2 votes, isn't there? Yeah.
And just noting the confidential.
Yeah.
Just says confidential.
So yeah.
It was just to note that there is confidential or press excluded. If anybody wants to speak about anything specific on the pink papers, then we would need to exclude the press and public. But if there's nothing specific, then we can take it into public session.
I think we've all had a chance to read that, haven't we, really? So if you're happy, it's up to you, Lee. So, yeah,
You know, it's unless anyone wants to go into specifics of the confidential stuff, but I can summarise the public part.
no, that's fine. So, yeah, so we take two votes, yeah? So we'll leave you to lead them as well, please,
Yeah.
Lee, when the time comes. Thanks.
So obviously everyone saw the papers. I'm not liking the numbering and lettering, so I do apologise. It's part A with an A and a B, and then a part B with an A. To summarise, part A went to overview, and everyone agreed. I think it was good for the public record just to note that the second motion that we're going to vote on, overview, did have some concerns over the wording, but there was a little bit of a misunderstanding on the night. With hindsight, with the lead officer and myself, we've discussed it at length, and I've spoken to members of overview. They thought there was an automatic assumption we were going to dispose, that is in the title, but tonight we are voting to send the lead officer away in conjunction with myself and other officers to work up that option and then come back to cabinet. So just to be clear, the first one is a disposals paper, but the second one is to come back with those particular properties. Obviously they're the ones that are annexed. So tonight, to resolve part A, that the proposed annual property disposal programme be agreed, and as such that the Part 1, that the head of property and regeneration be authorised to advertise the assets identified as surplus assets in accordance with the Local Government Transparency Code 2015. Number 2, that the head of property and regeneration in consultation with a cabinet member for property and IT be authorised to dispose of the assets through the most advantageous route, with the terms of each disposal to be agreed as outlined in the Constitution. Number 3, to authorise the head of legal services to enter any legal documentation necessary to complete the transactions. And then part B, that the assets recommended for disposal in the confidential Appendix 3 form that disposal programme for 26-27. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
Thanks. Does anyone want to ask any questions, or could we potentially go straight to a vote? Not that I'm presuming that. Sorry, I'm just generalising that we can. Thanks.
I'm happy to go for a vote. It's good to have that clarity, I think, and in the first part of it and the feedback on that, and picks up on the minutes and meetings, wasn't it? Okay, so what are we voting on, the whole lot or first bit?
We can take the whole lot because we can take part B at the same time. It's just it was split up in the report.
That's fine. If you're happy with that, let's do it all together then, yeah? That's fine. Yeah.
Apologies. So part B, that's good, we can vote as one. The head of property and regeneration in consultation with the director for finance and procurement, the S151 officer, cabinet member of property and IT, be authorised to negotiate in principle the terms for disposal for the property listed in part B of the property and disposal programme, This authority includes the appointment of professional advisors to assist with valuation negotiation as required, with any final terms and recommendations to be submitted to Cabinet for approval in a future report. Do I have a seconder, please?
Seconded.
Is it right if I just come back on that briefly again, just to clarify? Sorry, one other thing. Sorry, because I maybe skimmed over it. But obviously the properties aren't listed publicly. But obviously this forms part of our annual process. This will come back again next year, and we'll have probably a slightly different list. We're probably more extensive list as ever ahead of LGR. I did get contacted by a couple of council members who were concerned that things weren't on the list. But I said obviously that officers use their powers to work out what's financially best for the council. I think that's really important that we're not, disposing on things of a whim. And we're also really taking a measured approach. But again, any questions, happy to answer. Thank you.
No, it's fine. I think it's having that overview from yourself as well in conjunction with the officers. You can bring back to us anyway anytime, can't you, if you wish to discuss anything, so it's fine. Happy with that. So it's one vote, and that would agree both of those items.
And that's carried unanimously.
Right. Right. Item 14. Date of next meeting. It's the 9th of February, 7 p.m. There's no other urgent business to be dealt with in public. They should not be notified of it. I presume that's not the case. We don't need to exclude the press and public part of it, do we? No. We've got nothing in part C, because we've obviously we don't need to do that. And there's no other urgent business. It falls under the exempt provisions of the Local Government Act 1972 or the Freedom of Information Act 2000. No. Okay. In that case, I close this meeting at 21:20. Thank you all enormously. Really appreciate it tonight. Thanks a lot.